Rifling is the act, or process, of cutting spiral grooves in a gun barrel, and the system of spiral grooves so cut. However, this did not start with the modern rifle as we know it. The concept of making a projectile spin in mid-flight to achieve maximum range and accuracy is not a new one. Medieval crossbowmen offset the wings on their bolts, making the bolts spin and much more accurate. Archers did the same thing to their arrows. Between 1450 and 1500, the rifle as we know it was invented. In 1520, rich men in Italy and Germany used rifles. However, soldiers did not get them for another 150 years, and only then, even in small numbers. Rifling was first experimented on in the mid 1700s, but was not perfected until the 1800s. The first man to start work with rifling was a man from Britain named Benjamin Robbins in 1762, but his experiments were unproductive and failed to produce a viable result. The next person to take up the challenge was another British gentleman, Joseph Manton, in 1789. He actually was the first to invent a machine designed specifically to rifle a barrel. However, Manton and his backers didn't see the point of a cylindrical shot, and thus their experiment with spherical shot produced little results, and the project was scrapped. However, in the 1840s, people from other countries like France and Russia began to seriously start experimenting with the concept of rifling. When they first started, the effective range of most muskets was a mere 80 yards. However, field guns had an effective range of over 10 times that amount, topping out at 1,000 yards. Even earlier than the project in the 1840s, a viable prototype was introduced in 1823 in England, but because of politics, was rejected and never considered. The first rifle to finally be used by a military in Europe was by the Prussians in 1848. In 1836, William Greener of Britain came up with another bullet that proved effective. However, it was also rejected. The same year the Prussians started rifling their barrels, a man named Claude Etienne of the French army produced a bullet extremely similar to the Greener's, and it was accepted by the board this time. It was effective up to 1,000 yards, although some say it could kill at 1,400. Minet's rifles were mass-produced in 1851. Joseph Whitworth made several advances, one of which was beating the current model of rifle in all trials. However, he was not accepted or adopted by the British. Determined to prove his system effective, he sold his guns to the Confederates during the American Civil War and embarrassed the British, who saw the results of his work firsthand. He had 3 different types of ammunition, one of which was the first form of armor-piercing round. The system that was used, however, was invented by a man named Armstrong and was still very effective if used in smaller arms, like the 2.5 to 3 inch light cannons. The first time a heavy howitzer was proposed to be rifled was in 1864. However, despite good testing, it never went very far. The British Weapons Committee decided to even grant the use of design for large howitzers with rifles, but they never got to the production stage. In the early 1870s, breech loading weapons were brought back into the spotlight and replaced muzzle loaders slowly but surely forever. Smoothbore guns today are used only in certain shotguns. There are 4 main types of rifling. The first is called broach rifling. Broach rifling uses a long, hardened steel rod with cutting rings spaced down the rod for grooves. Button rifling is the most common today. A button is a metal plug that is forced down the barrel of the rifle. The pressure forms the grooves. The third is hammer forging, and it is the newest model of mechanical rifling. Hammer forging produces a type of rifling called polygonal rifling. A hardened steel mandrel is produced with the shape of the rifling formed on its outer surface. The mandrel is inserted into a barrel blank, and the outer surface of the barrel is machine hammered. The hammering forces the barrel material down against the mandrel, and the inner surface of the barrel takes on the shape of the mandrel. The final type is electromechanical. In a process that eliminates the conventional machining of metal, rifling is formed by wet etching the interior of a barrel under an electric current. Metal inside the barrel is actually eaten away or dissolved to create grooves in the barrel. An electrode that has metal strips in the shape of the rifling is placed in the barrel, and the assembly is submerged in a salt solution. An electric current is applied, and the electrode is moved down the length of the barrel, twisted to create the spiral-shaped grooves. As the current travels from barrel to electrode, metal is removed by electrolysis, thus forming the grooves in the barrel. This process creates the rifling in the barrel very quickly and does not require consumable tooling. Here we'll see a rifled gun in use. The gun being used is by me, and the weapon is an M4 custom variant. We were out at the gun range shooting this. The range we were at was over 100 yards, and although my accuracy isn't as good as some people, I was still able to get in the black of the target, as you can see. Several hundred years ago, this wouldn't have been possible to do with the weapon I was using simply because, well, they couldn't hit that far. Guns nowadays can even go up to a mile in distance, a feat never considered possible. Cannons were the only ones really to go far, and up until this point they can go even farther than miles. German rail cannons of World War II could go as far as 20, 30, 40 miles, some say. They are rifled as well. Rifling is produced and has been produced for hundreds of years, although people were slow to adapt to the change, simply because of old thinking. After it was finally widely accepted and smooth bore was slowly but surely replaced, people using rifled weapons, were able to far outmatch those who weren't. Rifling is a very, very important innovation through history, and it shaped modern warfare as we know it. People now die much more than they used to.